Dear students, let us start the discussion on today's newspaper, that is 24th November 2016. The first article, Treat Contempt with Contempt. You all know that a judge can issue a contempt order whenever he has been scandalized by an individual, whenever the wrong intentions are attributed to his judgment. Here, the purpose is to provide the respect for the citizens towards the judiciary to ensure that the honesty and integrity of the judiciary remains intact. And once the people's confidence becomes perilous or is lost in the judiciary, maintaining the rule of law in the country is very difficult. And this contempt of court orders are there from very colonial days in India. It has its origins in UK. But now if you see, UK and USA are moving away from the same. In UK, the judges are more and more resorting to defamation suits rather than issuing the contempt of court orders. The reason being is it is an established fact today that if the contempt of court is been issued, it is gets the undue publicity and it's going to do more harm than good. And the second is in US, the more than the contempt, it is more the defamation suits which are in order from very beginning. Now, the contempt of court is also against the principle of natural justice because in principle of natural justice no person can be a judge of his own case. Here the judge who is also a party to the case, he will decide on the judgment. So that's why it has been said violative of the principle of natural justice. But however, to maintain the integrity of the institution, the Article 19 subclause 2 that creates exemptions to the freedom of speech also exempts contempt of court. Now, where are our legal philosophers? What this article talks about? Now, a philosophy is about developing the universal principles, and it is a knowledge inducting process into the society. So, any philosopher, he does three things. He tries to bring correlation between various happenings within the society by understanding of the bigger picture. Now, in the case of the legal philosophy, correlations between the law, justice, and society, this is what is the important duty of a philosopher. And added to that, he has to question the notions of the universality for the principles which are proposed by the others. It means that the rationality has to drive the people towards bringing in the universal principles. So the status quoism is also questioned by the philosophers in this context. So the rationality is the only guiding force. And the third thing is, whatever the rules and laws made in the country, the judgments given by the courts are being verified by applying the universal principles. So, development of universal principles, questioning of the principles for their any exemptions, and finally, looking after these universal principles are being followed in the administration of a nation. This is what the legal philosophers does. In India, lack of these legal philosophers today is the major drawback. And on the other hand, so Rex Lex and Lex Rex we already studied in the case of rule of law. The Rex is a king, and in this he clearly says how a law shall not be. Now the first thing is a law shall be clear. If a law shall be a consistent principle, if not, it is being changed too frequently and ad where a citizen cannot prepare for the situation, then obviously it leads to a failure. And the law shall have as many least exemptions as possible. It shall not be applied retrospectively. And along with that, the law has to be well implemented so that what is on the paper and what is being administered, there shall not be any difference. So, with regard to Rex, these are the principles which are being stated. Now, any law and its weakness in implementation, you can take these principles. And what are the weaknesses of a particular law? What are the weaknesses of MG Narega? You can put these and you can make the answer. There shall not be contradictions between the laws. But in India, most of the law suffers from contradictions. Environment law comes in contradiction with the industry's policy, etc. So these are the topics here. Now, let's get into the editorial page. Close out the war on corruption. Now, the demonetization, one of the important objective is to fight the corruption. But however, the fight against the corruption cannot be reduced to the narrative of demonetization. Already we have seen that the demonetization will only deal with the stock but not with the flow of black money. So, what the author says is this: the action against the corruption and corrupt officials have to be certain. It means that the certainty of action, certainty of implementation of law will be a more deterrent to the corruption rather than the severity of law. In India, the emphasis is more on severity of the law. We shall shift to the certainty of the law. And the second thing is, previously, the corruption is more at the cutting edge level. I can say it this way: corruption can be divided into collusive and coercive corruption. The coercive corruption is at the bottom edge and collusive corruption at the higher level. But after 1991, in the post liberalization phase, the collusive corruption at the higher levels of the authority is dramatically increasing, and due to automation, the coercive corruption is decreasing. So, the cleansing of the system shall start from the top. The big fish shall not be paid for. Especially in the era of globalization, the comparative perspective with the private sector employees is growing in the public sector officers. So, here, after the seventh pay commission, the salaries of the public sector people also have become on par with the private sector. So it means there shall not be any incentive for corruption among the people. So any corruption today shows the growth of the greed and degrading of the values in the society. And to implement and to identify the corrupt officials and to take a swift action against them, a committee need to be constituted. And anti-corruption bureaus in most of the states are non-functional. So we need to improvise the administrative capacities and systems to fight the corruption at the state level. These are the things which are recommended by Mr. Raghavan in this article. And restore the ceasefire. You know that in between Pakistan and India, always there are ups and downs with regard to the relations are concerned. The continuous low fire or low intensity fire across the line of control is bringing in a huge damage. And here there are two options before the Prime Minister Modi. One is to continue this kind of low intensity fire for the continuous period, and then to delegitimize the role of Pakistani army in the eyes of the civilians. So this can be done through strikes and occupying certain part of the land across the LOC, or to give the diplomacy a chance. So in these circumstances, the first choice can escalate the situation, and it can be a no returning back. It can lead to a no returning back and escalate into a war where the stakes for both the countries are high. And the second thing is the diplomacy shall be given a chance. So in this context, the populism has to be slipped down to rationality, or rationality has given a place over the populism. So, 2003, the ceasefire agreement has come into force. And before 1989 to 2003, the situation was very much worse in India. But however, the situation got dramatically changed once the ceasefire has come into existence. The infiltration across the border has decreased. And also, we need to understand that this continuous firing at the LOC has higher stakes for India because human settlements across the border, close to the border, are high on Indian side compared to the Pakistani side. From 1989 to 2003, this low intensity fire is common across the LOC, and both the countries' armies have demonstrated that they have endless capacities to carry forward this. And the second thing, which is most worrisome for me, is this: the politics have to make the decisions related to the diplomacy or else war or fight across the border. But it appears that the existing government given the freedoms and liberties to the army to deal with the situation. It may make the situation to just go out of the control. So the polity or politics of the day have to take back the control over the situation across the border. That's what this article suggests for. Now, his voice carried across the barriers. Now, Mr. Mangalampalli Balamurali Krishna, the known Carnatic vocalist and instrumentalist, has passed away. And his style, etc., I can't discuss about this because I'm not an expert on this area. But however, it can be a two-marker question for you. And Carnatic music itself can be a two-marker question for you, or a five-marker question for you. The reason being is this: Miss Shubhalakshmi, MS Subbalakshmi, and Mr. Balamurali Krishna. These are the people known for Carnatic music and spread of it across the length and breadth of the world. Now coming to explain page, where India and Pak, where they are going. Now you understand the Pakistan army has a huge legitimacy as the protector of the sovereignty of the nation. The people view the Pakistani army there as not just the protector of their geographical barriers but also their ideological frontiers connected to the Islam. And the second thing is, whenever the line of control, the fire across has increased, it has hurt the civilians the most, and it is damaging for both the countries in the long run. So, when Parvez Musharraf was the chief of the Pakistan army, this intensity of the fire has increased. When he became the president, the diplomacy was given the chance and it has come down slowly, finally leading to a ceasefire agreement. But however, the ceasefire agreement is not in blue and black and written on the paper. So, we need to codify that as quick as possible. So, in this context, wherever the diplomacy was given a chance, it has provided for the better results to India. Now, what Marrakesh has achieved, you know that the recently this conference of parties was held in Morocco in Marrakesh. So here, what the Paris Agreement did, the most important achievement of the Paris Agreement is its transparency mechanism. It means after every 5 years, all the countries will meet and they will verify the intended nationally determined contributions and progress on the same, or they are on the path towards achieving this 1.5 degrees Celsius target or not. So, in this context, the we need to understand that before 2020 various promises are made. That is, you have the Kyoto follow-up summit at the Doha and also Cancun summit. So with regard to the Doha follow-up, it has been clearly stated that by 2000 there is a second phase of commitment period for the Kyoto Protocol. The first phase of commitment period is till 2012 from 2007. You know that. But the second phase of commitment period is said to be from 2013 to 2020. But however, it is not ratified yet by many countries. And after that, the Cancun conference has come up. Even in the Cancun, the $100 billion by 2020 has been promised by the developed world, but there is no transparency in the same. So, in this context, out of $100 billion which is promised, not even $3 billion are being delivered. Now, the developed world says that it has to be not just through the governmental transfers, it will also be through the investments by the private sector. It means that the developing world is expected to bear the costs of this particular climate change expenditure. So the West is not sticking on to its goals and its promises it made. So obviously it brings or else it weakens the fight against the climate change. So from 2020 onwards, it is promised that $100 billion will be transferred, the finances will be transferred to the developing world. How the mechanisms of this, how much will be the private sector and public sector transfers need to be made clear over here. Now, the streamline the appointments. The major problem with the Indian judiciary is lack of accountability. So, in this context, it says that the collegium system need to be made transparent, and also there shall be functional parameters, and how much or else what we can say is performance indicators for the judges to function in the office. A battle on two fronts. Now, if you see Indira Gandhi and Narendra Modi, I can bring some similarities. So, more than answering to the parliament, they are more interested to answer to the people directly. So, in this context, what I can say is Narendra Modi addressing the people on the issue rather than addressing and answering the parliament decreases the legitimacy of the parliament. So, an argumentative Indian will be replaced by an majoritarian Indian. That's what Mr. Shiv Vishwanathan talks about this situation. Now, let's come to the editorial page of Indian Express. Don't join the debate. So, always we talk about judicial activism and judiciary entering in the space of legislature and executive. So, in this context, the author argues that the demonetization exercise is an executive prerogative, and judiciary shall keep itself away from the same. And the judiciary time and resources are very precious and sacrosanct. It has to be put for the right use within its scope of action. And coming to the partial cure, now e-pharmacy guidelines are being brought up. Now you know that the e-pharmacy shops have come up, but however there are many. There were no guidelines for their acting, so they have developed their own self guidelines. In this, no drugs will be dispensed without the prescription, and also privacy will be protected. Added to that, the class X drugs will not be submitted or provided online. So in India, the major problem is over-the-counter sale of the drugs. Because of this, the misuse of the antibiotics is very severe and it is leading to drug resistance in India. So the e-pharmacy proper guidelines and regulation can improve the situation in this particular country. So these are the articles for today. Let us see the notes how are made. Before going to that, one of the important news is on the Lokpal. You know that the Lokpal is passed in 2013, still now the Lokpal is not appointed. So it's an institution of the probity, and it is fought with a, or else it has been come into existence with a huge fight by the civil society. So in this context, the support to amendments has to be passed. One of the amendment is the appointment of the Lokpal by a three-member committee consisting of Prime Minister, Leader of Opposition in Lok Sabha and CJI. As there is no opposition party, leader of the single largest party has to be part of this. But however, the government did not taking this amendment forward because of this appointment of Lokpal is getting delayed further and further. Now let's see the notes. The thin red line. So it says that from 1989 to 2009, the Indian and Pakistan army shows the highest ability to fight low intensity warfare, or showed highest in low intensity fire across the LOC. And diplomacy, whenever it was given a chance, it showed the results. It's the time the country shall give the chance to the diplomacy. What Marrakesh has achieved. So, what I can say is the sustenance follow up to the Paris Treaty was the Marrakesh achievement. But however, the West has to stick to its words. Before 2020, many of the promises made at the Cancun and Doha, which need to be taken forward. Don't join the debate. It is here we want to say that the demonetization is an executive prerogative and Supreme Court shall kept itself away from the same. The judiciary, performance indicators for the judges and transparency in the collegium process is necessary. Editorial, close the war on corruption. Already I have discussed the Raghavan's article over here. Treat the contempt with contempt. So the judges shall resist themselves from issuing the contempt orders too frequently in India. Where our legal philosophers are in this, when a law and its implementation becomes weak, some 6 to 7 criteria are given. Please go through the same. So these are the articles for today. Thank you very much and all the best.